So let me tell you a few things, how we have evolved in the past maybe 50, 60 years. I'm from Iran. I was born some 62 years ago. And my father had to go to work at 4 in the morning. So what we used to do, my brother and I, we used to just go in the streets, find wood, put them in a bag, bring them home, make fire, boil some water, make some tea. My father would drink his tea, have some bread, and then go to work. And then he would come home for lunch, and then dinner, of course. We would sit together, we would look at each other, and then my father would tell us his day. 4 or 5 of us sitting around the table. And you know, you're a kid. You can't talk over your father. And just in case you have an emotional outburst, your gift is a nice little slap. As we say in Persian, "Chub muallim gul ast, har ke nakhorat khul ast." That sometimes all you need really in life to get straightened a little is just a tiny little slap. No book will help, no conversation will help, just a kick or a punch or a slap. You know, I remember those days when my father would sit and talk for hours, telling us the same old story over and over and over again. Imagine going home or going out with your companion to a coffee shop, and as you're talking to your companion, they keep looking at their phone. They're not interested in what you have to say. Maybe they're addicted to their cell phone. Maybe they're not into you anymore. But the most important thing you should know is that while you're talking and while they're on their cell phone, they have made you invisible. You don't exist. They're not listening to you. Luckily, some 50, 60 years ago, when my father was talking, we would listen. We had no choice. It would make him feel visible, relevant, significant, important. And we couldn't yawn. We couldn't just walk to our bedroom because we didn't have a bedroom way back then. You had to pretend. And for those of you who may not know this, most of life is just about pretending, and you have to learn how to pretend well. You don't have to like me, but you just have to be aware that this class will take you to San Francisco State. It's a doorway to a 4-year school. And you're a social animal, which means that you need to make sure that other people like you because you depend on them for your success. So you pretend well. And so time passed, and one day my father comes home with this wooden box. We had no idea what it was. And he plugs it in. It was a time where we just got electricity. And all of a sudden, this voice comes out of this wooden box, and we ask my father, "What the hell is this?" It's a radio. We're still sitting together. We're still having food together. We're still looking at each other. But no one talks. Because my father can no longer match all the stories that come out of this wooden box. The stories are far too exotic, far too interesting. They tell you what's happening in America, what's happening in Africa, in India, what's happening in certain parts of Iran. What can my father say, really, to compete with that? I drove to the gas station, and as time passed, all of us came to realize that my father is becoming more introverted. He talks less, he smiles less, he's less fun to be around. The radio had made him a bit more invisible. They were no longer interested in what he had to say, and every time he wanted to interject and say a couple of things, he would say, "Dad, do you mind if we turn on the radio and listen to it?" But we still sat together. Time passed, but it seems that my father didn't learn from his mistake. This time he comes home with this huge wooden box. You plug it in and it's a TV. It's true, it's the 1960s and 70s and it's Iran. We only had 2 channels. One channel had to do with politics, the other channel had to do with religion. That's it. And the images were beautiful. We still sat together, ate together, but no one talked to anyone and no one looked at anyone. We were all glued to the TV screen. I mean, look, if you're looking at the TV screen and there is Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, Do you really want to look at your companion who looks like a truck? No. So the TV made my father even more invisible, more insignificant, more irrelevant. We didn't even miss the guy. And just in case you got bored, you just turn on the TV or the radio. But we still had the telephone, which meant that if you wanted to see your grandma, but you didn't have the means, there were no donkeys available, or no cars, or no gas, or no money, you would pick up the phone and talk to your grandma. Now here's the thing you need to know about 50 years ago. You could be on the phone with your friends, with your relatives for hours. We had the imagination and the creativity to just have a long conversation about irrelevant things, but for hours. It's a lost art now to pick up the phone and talk to someone for hours. I'm not talking about, talking about your traumas or issues, what so-and-so did to you. Because 50, 60 years ago, it would be impolite to just have the conversation revolve around you. Time passed and we had the cell phones. But they added something very interesting to cell phones: texts. The idea of calling someone and talking to them and trying to come up with stories is too tough, too difficult. You have to exercise just too much energy and imagination, and that's too much for us. So instead of being on the phone, talking to someone and coming to realize how incompetent, stupid you are because you can't really express the ideas and the emotions that live inside you, we began to text. Human beings are very, very complicated animals. You text 5 words, and of course the reply is one of those emojis. Thumbs up, thumbs down. So just in case those of you in this class want to get married, have children, have a companion, you need to know your history, which is none of us in this class have the ability to keep a conversation going for too long. And without conversation, there is no intimacy. So, my request then is this: for the next 15 or so weeks, when you come to class, don't look at your phone. The truth is, you have nothing to say to anyone. And the truth is, other people don't have anything to say to you. You're not very interested, and neither are the people you hang out with. This class is not going to be fun. It's going to be enormously boring. And the truth is, that's how most relationships are, boring. For those of you in this class who have been in long-term relationships, look at your parents. How often do they talk? Not very often. Why? It's boring. But that doesn't mean you're divorced. It just means that that's just the way life is. If you're bored, pretend as if you're interested. The way you pretend that Home Depot is interested. Imagine you go to a car dealership and there are some vultures standing around, right? You got no money in your pocket. You're not really interested in buying a car. Your boyfriend has left you. You're just stranded and you have nothing else to do except to look at cars. Now, one of those vultures standing to sell you something comes to you, imagining that you're a potential buyer. Says, "Hey, what's up? What can I do for you?" And all of a sudden, you begin to cry. "My boyfriend left me." "Fine. What kind of a car do you like?" "I am heartbroken." "That's great, but what's your budget?" And when he comes to realize you're not there to buy a car, he doesn't really give a shit what you're going through. He just walks away. You can only be interesting if you ask questions that I like. Now here's the problem. I am 62. You are 16. There's a 50-year difference. Now, questions to you, your questions may sound interesting to you and for you, not for me. Now, let's say you ask a question that I'm interested in. So interested that I'm willing to kind of wrestle with it. there's a good chance you won't get any of it. Because you don't have my perspective, because you don't have my experience, because you don't have the language. It takes a long time to be able to ask questions that you actually understand. You see, when you get to be my age, you come to realize something really interesting. When you're 16, all men look interesting and they're appetizing. When time passes, you realize there are lots of people who look good, but they're just not interesting. And as you get older and wiser, your world begins to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So let me tell you, for those of you in this class who do have children or who do want to have children in the future, right now you have maybe 50, 60, 70, 80 friends. Then you have children. Then you have a child, for example. Then you sit back and you say, you know what? I love my kid and I don't want to put my kid in harm's way. I'm going to homeschool them. I'm going to make sure that the people I invite to the house, they're not drinkers, they're not porners, they're not smokers. They don't use foul language. Now, you've been hanging out with all these people for the past like 20, 30, 40 years, but all of a sudden, because you have a child, you only realize you only have 2 good friends. And those are the only people you will ever invite. This only happens with age and experience. Where you are in life, you won't get that just yet. Now, you may want to. It's like a 10-year-old who says, I want to read Plato and understand it. You can read. You can maybe even intellectually understand. But you will never be able to apply what you understand. It just takes time. Now, one of the things that you need to get about being young is that all young people imagine that they have it all together. You have to be profoundly, profoundly wise and insightful to look yourself in the mirror as an 18-year-old and say, you know what? I'm a piece of shit. I don't know anything about anything. You're not learning. What you're doing right now is you're just feeling some things, which is the first stage. You become an emotional junkie at the beginning. You know, it's like you have a relationship, it's not going well. You want to intellectually understand it, process it, have the tools to fix it, but you're not there yet. All you know is that whenever this guy comes home, you want to explode, you want to fight, you don't know why. You're just angry. And it's all feelings and emotions. There comes a point where you say, I am so tired of just feeling this way all the time. And at that stage you say, I cease to be an emotional junkie. And what happens, you step out of your emotions, and now you begin to observe those emotions and how those emotions come about and what their impact is on the way you feel, on the way you think, and on the way you behave. Now remember, an emotional junkie is like any other junkie, which means that by the time you become a junkie, you have created some habits, some routines. You have to be able to overcome them like any alcoholic. And that's going to be tough. And then processing anything. You know why you're able to process food? You have a beautiful digestive system. It's going to take you a long, long time, intellectually mature, become a great observer of things, to be able to look at your emotions and have the teeth to break them down. But to break them down, you have to first be able to chew them. The problem with chewing emotions is that we are creatures of sloth. We are far too lazy. I mean, look, if you look at human history, imagine for a moment, stretch your imagination some 2,000 years ago. How many disciples did Jesus have? 12 crummy ones. And Jesus supposedly is God or a man of wisdom or a prophet. How many of those disciples was he able to really transform? 0. They all betrayed him. How about Muhammad? He was a prophet for 22 years. How many battles did he have? About 50 almost. Moses, despite, and I'm not saying that these folks actually existed, but let's just assume that they actually have historical accuracy. What happened to Moses? He rescues his people, divides the ocean, and in the end, he says to his brother, Aaron, bro, I'm tired of my people. They suck. Here's my staff. I'm leaving. Lao Tzu. You know what? I don't want to teach my people. They suck too. And the point I'm trying to make is learning is a nearly impossible task. changing is even more difficult. I don't know if you have any friends who drink. I don't know if you have any friends who are alcoholics. It's not that they don't desire to change, they do. It's just very difficult to overcome habits. You're 16. You know what you suffer from? One of the 7 deadly sins, pride. It's wonderful. Don't get me wrong, pride is wonderful if used the right way. When you have children, some of us in this class do, you have a 5-year-old and you have a 4-year-old. The 5-year-old can do things that the 4-year-old can't, but the 5-year-old creates envy, jealousy, anger inside the 4-year-old. My sister can actually reach the doorknob. I can too. And you know why? It's called pride. I can too. And tries and tries and tries and tries. And that envy and that pride is actually good. But there is also false pride. That you give yourself certain talents you don't really have. To know that you can't do much gets you sad and depressed. In sadness and depression, you feel isolated. In isolation, you feel lonely. In this culture, when you're sad, depressed, and lonely, you're medicated. In other parts of the world, you're at the right stage to be taught good lessons. When I first began teaching some 30-some years ago, like all young people, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have beautiful children, and my life will be filled with excitement and creativity and passion. To your parents and you say, well, they don't really talk very much. My dad goes to work 9 to 5. My mom cooks all the time. What kind of a life is that? And it's the right place to be, you know, for a young kid to look at the elders and say, this is not what I want. The time passes. And you realize that life really, for the most part, has only one function. To slap you around a little bit, to take the glossiness out of your hopes and dreams and slap some facts into your soul. And then you realize what you want is not creativity or passion. What you really want is stability. You want a man who just leaves you alone, once in a while understands you. You want a man who says thank you when you cook for him. You don't want a Mozart. You don't want a Nietzsche. You just want someone who's stable, who's solid, who has a job, who gives you a paycheck, who can pay the mortgage and car payments and take care of the kids once in a while. And so when I first started teaching, I said, well, shit, you know, I love this stuff. And I'm going to go to my class and I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. But then time passes. And then you realize the complications of teaching, of learning, of 30 years ago, people were different. There were no cell phones. We didn't have internet. People were much more civilized, much more respectful. But despite all that, you come to realize as you age and you gain more experience that things are really, really complicated. And then, as you understand more, you become more realistic. Just go back to your own life experiences. How you met him, how he inspired attraction. You may even have fallen in love with him. Maybe you became a poet. Maybe you suffered from the pangs of separation and you were ecstatic when you guys were in union of sorts. Then you just became another guy that grew on you like cancer. You call him once in a while. You text him once in a while. He inspires you once in a while. And there is nothing wrong with that. But if you look at your own life experience, you realize, well, you've transitioned. You become much more mature, much more stable. Love really no longer has that much power over you. You have control of your emotions, your thoughts. And when your boyfriend does something nasty, you call him on it. Something you didn't do when you first met because you wanted it. You're much more realistic. That's all it is. So why am I here? Why are you here? Well, you're here for 3 units. I'm here just to talk a little bit and go home. But it's a little bit more complicated, and we have 15, 16 weeks to talk about it.